Howdy y'all, I just finished up a training block that was very successful. I ended up with a 1940 training total from a 716 squat, a 455 bench, and a 770 deadlift. And I think it was 15, 30 pounds on my total, so a very, very good block for me. And I was just going to kind of go over some of the reasons I think it was very successful, some things I want to do going forward, and just generally do a block overview. So I'm going to try and start with just a recap of how it went, the training variables that I think I did better, diet, and then life factors. So for a general overview of the block, I came into it with a 706 squat last block, a 440 block bench from 1 or 2 blocks ago, and then a 765 deadlift a few blocks ago because I had a small hamstring injury that really nagged around for quite a while. So in some ways this was kind of a rehab block, and then I just so happened to end up with a PR. So coming into the squat, we had some good momentum. I've been able to consistently PR my squat for quite a few blocks. But a big tool for that was my belt squat. And I no longer had access to one that I liked because I moved gyms, and the gym I moved to, I didn't really like the belt squat. It caused me some SI joint pain. And so for the first little bit of the block, we were trying to figure out a replacement for that. I was doing high bar as my secondary. I had some pretty good high bar sets. I might throw one in right here. But my hip strength was the thing that we knew was kind of the make or break for my squat. So finding a wide stance belt squat or something akin to that was a big thing for us. And I ended up towards the end of the block finding wide stance pendulum squats. They had a pendulum squat, and I just threw my feet as wide as we could. And that was, I think, a big help for allowing the last couple weeks of the block to go really well, because as they ramped, obviously they get heavier and higher intensity. And I think finding something to really address that weakness allowed me to hit a big PR and to do it well. So going forward, I think something I really want to do is just keep hammering those, because I think my quads kind of just naturally come up from hitting high bar, and we hit leg extensions, and my back is just strong from doing deadlifts, and I do a lot of upper back work. And so usually my hips can fall behind, and so having a accessory in the pendulum is really, really helpful for keeping that up. On the bench, my bench has always been my weakest lift and pretty inconsistent. Over a period of time, we've put on a bunch of muscle. I went from probably 270 to I'm probably 300 right now. And a lot of that was upper body muscle, and my bench did not reflect the amount of upper body muscle I had put on. And I think a lot of that was my bench technique had gotten almost inversely worse as I've gained more muscle. And so it was just a big part of this block was improving my form and allowing myself to capitalize on the amount of muscle I put on. I did think I put on a lot of strength I did think I put on some strength, especially in my triceps, just because I always have a lockout problem. So the change that we made this block for bench that allowed it to be a really exceptional block was we did a lot more sub-max rep work opposed to shooting for rep PRs. We would just every day go in, and I was never hitting something that was even close to failing. It was just practicing my technique, and then the actual building of muscle came after in accessories. We really hammered a lot of close grip dips, which I think were a huge builder for me. I'll throw in an example right here. I was really focusing on tucking my elbows, and I was sometimes inconsistent with blocking out, which was stupid because it's a tricep motion, but I think that was a really real help for me because my triceps have always been a weakness, and so getting them up allowed me to more consistently keep my scaps down, opposed to having to lift up and press through the shoulders. So building my triceps and keeping my form more consistent and building on that was a huge help. And then on my deadlift, like I mentioned, I'm coming off a small hamstring injury. It's certainly not my biggest injury, but it nagged around for probably longer than almost any other, because it was around for 3 blocks, which is almost a half a year. And it wasn't like coming in with crippling pain. It was just like I'd retweak it occasionally, and it just prevented me from actually ever putting in the work necessary to come to a new PR. And so I worked with one of the physical therapists at the gym I go to, owner, Billy, shout out Billy at Prime, and he said it was more than likely a nerve thing because muscles heal a lot faster than 6 months, and it was pretty obviously like not a muscle thing because I had no bruising, and it was just like a weird nagging feeling in my hamstring. And so he had me hit basically with a leg extension where I was stretching my hamstring at the top, and I went on a lot of walks. I think those two things and just giving it time to recover and not pushing super hard for a little bit really allowed it some time to heal. I think the reason I had this injury was because we dropped down on the amount of like long ROM hamstring volume. Stiff leg, straight legs have always been a real staple of my program. I think it's a huge reason as to why I was a really good deadlifter, outside of like leverages and like just naturally being pretty good at it. I think pushing really aggressive stiff legs have always been like a real strong suit of mine, and then dropping those, didn't really think about it because we've always seen it as a strength, and then suddenly when your strength becomes like maybe not as strong as it could be and you rely on them, you know, you injure yourself. So last block, I finally came to a point where we're hitting volume sets that were like close to where I should be, and I wasn't having as much pain. And so the goal was to like try and set like a point in which we could base my current block on. And so we weren't sure where it was going to end up at. I came in and I hit 725, and it moved well, and Sam gave me the go-ahead. If I really wanted to, I could go for 770, and you know, kind of an egotist, I was like, for sure have it. Went for 770. I got it, which was really, really exciting for me. So yeah, I think a big thing that helped my deadlift were a few things. One, getting healthy was the first priority, so that was a big thing. Two was increasing my hamstring strength as to where it could be, or should be, sorry. And so that came in two ways. We started doing deficit stiff legs again, which I think was a huge help and something that we probably now know to never drop again. And two, adding in GHR back raises. I think personally it felt like a huge difference for me. Like doing just twice a week extra deep hammy work. I think one helped build up like that tolerance again, and two helped build that strength that I had been missing. And then the other thing was I think I did a better job of just like really pushing my upper back work, which sometimes I can slack on, and I think building my upper back has been extremely helpful for all three lifts. So I think building up strong hammies, upper back, and getting healthy really allowed me to hit a new deadlift PR, and I think we're coming close to a formula on all three that's more sustainable long term. We had to make some programming changes because I had kind of outgrown one of our older training models, and we had to kind of adapt to being a heavier and stronger lifter. So yeah, I would say that's kind of the training variables. I also, one of the big things that I think a lot of people kind of sleep on is the outside of gym variables, and I think I made some good strides in that. One, I got my diet a lot more in check than it has been. Obviously, like, I think I slacked on my diet, especially when I was like 16. I was just trying to put down a bunch of food, so getting my diet in check I think was a huge, easy game. So I broke down my diet into like a consistent, I'll just give you a general idea. It was, what I've come to now is 275 grams of rice, 5 ounces of chicken, and 5 eggs is my first meal. Second meal is 275 grams of rice and 10 ounces of chicken. Third meal, 275 grams of rice and 10 ounces of chicken. Fourth meal is 275 grams of rice and 10 ounces of steak. And then I have a protein shake before I go to bed. And it comes out to around 300 grams of protein, and I think around 4,200 calories. Numbers might prove me wrong on that. But I think having a more consistent eating pattern and eating healthier, I don't count them, but in my macros, but I do have a lot of vegetables. I have carrots and snap peas are my personal favorite. I have a lot of bananas and strawberries in there. Obviously, it's not the most like strict diet in the world because I just said I don't acknowledge fruit or vegetables. But I think that was a huge change for me. I also added in just like more vitamins. I like started having a consistent vitamin D, magnesium, and zinc, and then just a daily multi. I don't know how much of a difference those made, but I think it was a huge difference. I think long term it'll make a big difference in terms of health, just having more consistent vitamins. And then one of the big things that I think was a huge change was I started adding a little bit of avocado or olive oil to my chicken meals, just because I think I was really, really low on fats, and I think that made a huge difference. I think I was probably close to like maybe 20 grams of fat a day, which is way lower than it should be. So I think that made a big difference in terms of like getting my hormone levels in check, and I think it was affecting my sleep, how low my fats were. And sleep was also something. I think sleep is one of my biggest training variables, and I've had pretty consistent sleep through the whole block. And that kind of gets to my general life stuff. So I moved out when I was 17, but this is the first time I've been like, or this is the first time I've had kind of all of my work and variable stuff in check. I'm currently working at a lab as kind of just like a packaging guy, but I work from 8 to 4:30. And so consistent hours have been a huge deal. I was working at a pizza place before and it was not consistent hours. Great place, but just like it's a little bit harder when you have like, you know, one day you work this and the other day you work that. Pretty hard to like kind of dial in your variables. So having a consistent work schedule was really, really big for me. Also super low stress, another huge thing for me. And so I think having a consistent work schedule allowed me to kind of dial in on my diet and my sleep, my training, because I was training at the same time, I was eating the same thing, and I was sleeping the same amount every day. And so I think just those three things make a huge difference. And yeah, so going forward, some things I think we can work on and some things I'd like to continue working on. One, building my hip strength on the squat. Two, we're changing kind of how we do it, so I have more like technique practice in my squat. We've noticed that I don't really dial in my technique until the last couple of weeks of the block, so I think that's going to be a really important change. Continue building on the amount of muscle and also continue working on my technique on bench, building up my triceps, and just getting, you know, building more consistent, good technique. I think is going to be a huge one. And just like from there, putting on more muscle is, you know, big body, big bench. And then on the deadlift, just continue building up my hamstrings and try to utilize my hips more. I'll sometimes kind of let the weight pull me forward a little bit, kind of just like get it moving quick. So building up, using my hips more, getting a stronger upper back, and building up my hamstrings again to where they should be, I think will be really big one for me. And to end this video off, a little bit of an announcement. I'm doing a meet in I think 12 or 13 weeks. So I'm probably going to do like maybe like a weekly or bi-weekly training recap on how things are going and what I'm doing. Let me know if you guys would be interested in like kind of a road to a meet. I don't have any like outrageous goals. I just kind of like to get my current goals done in meet. Or my current goals done in meet would be really, really exciting. And then later on the year before I turn 20, I'd like to kind of do a big deal meet. Because I haven't competed in, I think, 2 years. So yeah, I'm sorry if this is a little bit choppy. I'm not super used to being on camera. Thank you guys. If you guys have any recommendations on videos, let me know. I'm glad to be on the Sheether Training channel. All right, adios.